how does a story begin in my mind? So maybe we should begin from the apartment that we are filming in. It's not my home, it's an apartment in Turin. I have been lucky to stay here 2 times a year because I teach in Schola Holden. And I have written here a couple of stories from my new book, from Legami. And it became like my lucky apartment. I come here, I feel inspired, something about the light, the bells of the church, the piazza. Maybe I will begin with describing how does a story begin in my mind. And I will take as an example the story which is called Bells from the new book. And well, sometimes a story begins with something annoying that happens in your life. And that something was the fact that the first night I arrived at this flight, I thought to myself, well, this is the perfect flat. Okay? This is my dream flat. But then the church bells started to ring. Now, you must understand, we're talking about less than a 50 meters distance between the place that I sleep and the church bells that are ringing. They are ringing every half hour, very loud. It's like they are ringing near your ear. So, and I'm not used to that because I usually don't live near the churches. So, first nights here in this beautiful, wonderful apartment, I couldn't sleep for even a single moment because the church bell drove me crazy. I would wake up every half an hour, curse my life and try to fall asleep again, and then the church bells were banging in my head. So after 3 sleepless nights, I had this idea. Maybe I can go to the church and I could ask the priest to lower the volume a little bit. Now, I was half serious and half joking with myself about it, but I was the way I was educated, my mother always told me, if you have a problem, try to act on it. Don't just reflect on it, but try to act on it. So I went to the church. It's near the Bicerin here. It's Via de Consolata. And I actually found out when is the service happening. It usually happens around 8 a.m. So I was there 8 a.m. I participated in the service. I'm Jewish, so it was the first time in my life to participate in a Christian service. And then, of course, you can't talk with the priest while the service is going on. So I waited until it ended, and then everybody kind of went out of the church, and I was looking for the confession cells. I thought to myself, if I want to talk with the priest intimately and ask this very intimate question, can you please lower the volume of the church bells down? I must find a way to talk with him personally. So I thought, well, maybe a confession cell would be a good idea. So the thing was, there was a line of people waiting to talk with him in the confession cell. It was at least 5 people wanted to confess that morning. And I was sitting in the line thinking about what are they confessing about? What are their sins? And I had these thoughts in my mind. And then eventually, I didn't have the courage, the nerve to go inside a confession cell in a church and to actually ask a priest to cancel the church bells that have been ringing for 500 years. Okay, eventually I didn't do it, but, and this is where the story begins. Many times the story begins from things you wanted to do in life, you almost did, but you didn't do. But now, if you're writing fiction, you can do it. That's your opportunity. That's your chance to do whatever you couldn't do in the real life. So I wrote a story about it. And in the story called The Bells, it's an Israeli writer. He comes to Turin. His mother died, and he's and the church bells are ringing while I'm telling this, and he's grieving, but he can't really grieve, he can't really mourn because the church bells are ringing all the time, and he can't sleep. And in the story, he actually goes to a confession cell, and then he has to find what to confess about, and that was also a crucial part in developing the story, because it has to be a true confession. Otherwise, the priest will immediately let him out of the confession cell. So this is the way the story was created. It started with something that happened in real life, and then I take it to the extreme. Then I can develop it into a story. And this is, generally speaking, how I work. I'll take another example from this book, a story called Cuore del Cinema, the heart of the cinema. I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was asking him, well, how are you doing? And he said, well, I was with my father in a hospital all weekend because he had a heart attack. And I said, wow, a heart attack, where, how, what happened? He said he was sitting in a cinema, and he had the heart attack while watching a film, a movie. And the thing was, the friend tells me, he had to reach my mother and tell her while the movie was going on that he's feeling pain in his chest. And then I kind of paused for a minute, and I thought, why does he have to reach the mother? Aren't they sitting beside each other? Why does he have to reach her? So I asked this friend the same question. Why did your father have to reach your mother? What's the problem there? And he says, well, yeah, my father is really annoying when they watch films together. He has all these remarks and criticisms. So my mother decided that when they go to the cinema together, they will sit far from each other, so he won't annoy her. So I thought to myself, okay, that's a good beginning for a story. There's this couple. They're together for 40 years. They're going to cinema together for 40 years, and always the man is annoying and criticizing and drives the woman crazy. Maybe she also drives him crazy a little bit. And then one day, the woman decides, today, for the first time, we're not going to sit together. She buys two different tickets. They are far from each other for the first time in their couplehood, and from there, I begin this story. I take the mechanism of my work. I take something from life, and I kind of develop it into a drama or a mini drama, using what I take from my own surroundings, and then taking it to the extreme, or taking it maybe to the dream or the nightmare that I might have had. And I give another example, maybe my favorite example from my new book. I play tennis. I play tennis for at least 30 years, and we play in tennis courts near Tel Aviv. And one day, strangely, they decided to open a restaurant in the middle of the tennis court area. It was a Hungarian restaurant, and so we were playing tennis, looking at this restaurant and thinking to ourselves, why would anyone want to open a restaurant inside a tennis court? And actually we were right, because the restaurant was closed down after a couple of months. And then instead of this restaurant, they opened a new one. It was a vegetarian restaurant in the middle of a tennis court. And we thought to ourselves, okay, vegetarian restaurant in the middle of a tennis court, it won't work. And it didn't work. They closed down the restaurant, and instead of the restaurant, they opened up a venue for bar mitzvahs and weddings. In the middle of a tennis court, at least like 10 tennis courts, so in the middle, a venue. So we were looking at that and thinking to ourselves, who would want to celebrate his bar mitzvah or wedding in the middle of a tennis court? But we were wrong. This venue became a huge success, and people started celebrating their most important moments in life in the middle of this tennis court venue. And we were, the tennis players, we were kind of interacting and colliding with the guests of the wedding, and they were really dressed beautifully, and we were sweaty and dirty, and everyone was kind of mixing with each other. I thought to myself, this is interesting. It's interesting. Like it's like an accident that is waiting to happen. And then one day we are playing tennis, and I forgot to say, the more we play, our talent, our abilities get worse. It's deteriorating because we are getting older. So we are playing tennis, and my partner, it's the same partner since the age of 16. He's throwing the ball at me, and I'm giving back a fierceful forehand. Too fierceful, because the ball is flying above his head and above the fence. Okay. Meanwhile, the wedding is going on. In a Jewish wedding, you have the chuppah. Chuppah is like the most important moment of the wedding. There's the rabbi, and this is the moment, the decisive moment of the wedding, and it's happening outside of the venue, in an empty zone between the venue and the tennis court. So I'm hitting the ball too strong, and the ball is flying, and I see the route. I can see that it's going to hit the bride, the rabbi, the groom. The wedding is going to be destroyed, and I'm already thinking about, like, how can I apologize? What will I say? Now, eventually, in real life, what happened is that the ball made this route, and it hit the foot of one of the people that was holding the chuppah. Not the groom, not the bride, not the rabbi. One of the friends got the ball on his shoe. He looked at it, he smiled, and nothing was ruined. But then I started thinking, okay, that could be a beginning of a story, but let's take it to the extreme. Not a ball just hitting the chuppah or the wedding, but let's take it even more interesting. Let's make it even more interesting. And maybe there's a bride. She's about to get married, but she has like last minute confusion, maybe second thoughts. She's not really sure of this marriage. And she's a tennis player. She already has her wedding dress on her, but she feels like doing the last crazy thing that she can do in her life before getting married. And she asks two tennis players, can she join them and play for a while with them? And then this is how the story 40 Love begins. There's a bride getting inside a tennis court, and she asks them, can she play with them for a while? And by the way, the fascinating fact about this story is that of course, it's completely fiction. And when I gave my tennis partner, I gave him the story to read. I gave him the whole book to read, and he said, it's a wonderful book, but you have this one of the stories is completely crazy. Like it couldn't happen. It's like, it's too imaginary. Asking, what story are you talking about? And he said, yeah, 40 Love, that the bride entering the tennis court. No, it's too much. It's like surreal. So I decided to keep the story, even though he was critical about it. And then after the book came out, the book was published in Israel in August 23. At around September, I get a WhatsApp message from, well, it's her private life. I would change her name, not call her in her real name. Okay, let's call her Sarah. So Sarah sends me a WhatsApp. She's not a close friend of mine. She's kind of a second circle, third circle, a friend of a friend of a friend. And she sends me a WhatsApp. And in the WhatsApp, there's a picture. And I open the picture, and there's a bride with a wedding dress. And she has a tennis racket in her hand, and she's playing tennis. And she writes me, how did you know? So sometimes the most crazy things that you invent or imagine, they end up being a reality of a real person that we called Sarah, and is actually living in Israel. What is even more amazing, that if you look at the way the marriage of this Sarah developed, it's quite similar to what I'm describing in the story. So yeah, sometimes it happens like this. So I was asked to choose one word that is in the heart of my book, and actually I chose the word lev, which means in Hebrew a heart. I think from many aspects it's a central theme in the book. First we have the hungry heart, the desideri, the Bruce Springsteen hungry heart, which begins the book, and actually also all the characters in a way are desiring for something. Maybe they will get it, maybe they won't, maybe it will take years until they get it, but I think this idea of desiring is central to the book. Also the physical body. It's a book about legami, about attachments between people, but the way to tell it is through the body. I think the body is the best show don't tell we have as writers. It's a beautiful expression of our soul, and that's what I was trying to do in this book. We have again and again